Hello, everyone, and welcome to Varsity Aces Live. I'm sports writer Greg Mattura for NorthJersey.com and The Record. Tonight's topic, the NJSIAA releases an amended proposal today, Wednesday, May 12th, in which they will not reduce the basketball season by 21 days, but rather by about 12 days. This comes after a statewide outcry from coaches, most especially basketball coaches, who felt excluded from this decision process. Their voices got them back 9 more days. So that is the topic tonight. We're bringing on 3 North Jersey basketball coaches to talk about this amended proposal and what their thoughts are moving forward for the basketball seasons, not just next year, but in the years beyond. So let's bring on our guests. First, we have from Pascack Valley girls basketball, Coach Jeff Jasper. How are you, Jeff?
Doing great, Greg. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being on. Second, we have Emerson boys basketball coach John Ziemba. John, how are you?
Doing good, Greg. Again, thank you. Thank you for having us.
And then also we have Brian Dunn, not only the Northern Valley at Old Tappan girls basketball coach, but also a football coach for the Golden Knights. So he'll be bringing an additional perspective to this discussion. So let's start right in here. Again, amended proposal today by the NJSIAA, in which they're only going to trim the scheduled season starting in 2022-2023 by 12 days instead of 21. Jeff, let's start with you. There's the proposal up there. It's a comparison of the upcoming season. That's before the changes take place. 21-22, and then on the right side there, that would be what the proposal would look like for 22-23. That's the first of 4 seasons underneath the new proposal, which is not a done deal right now. It still has to be voted on next month in June. As you can see, the season roughly went from 72 regular season days down to 60. So again, Jeff, let's start with you. Your thoughts on this amended proposal.
Well, I want to start with I'm so proud of all of the coaches who took an opportunity here to use their voice, to make to contact representatives, to sign that online petition, and not, as someone said, sit on the couch and watch Netflix. What we needed here was some voice. It was difficult for all of us, I think, when the initial proposal came out, and we had known nothing about it. We're not on the know, and so this I see this as a major step forward. Very pleased that they would listen. I don't think there's any of us who would be totally satisfied with what we're looking at, and I'm sure we'll discuss that some tonight. But I'm really proud of all the coaches who took it upon themselves to let their voice be heard.
Let's have the readers know that Jeff started an online petition that when last I checked, more than 250 coaches had signed. That was as of about a week ago, so I don't know how many more signed in, but certainly that had an impact. John, also an outspoken critic of the 21-day reduction. John, what are your thoughts now on the give back by the NJSIAA proposal?
Well, like what Jeff just said, we were caught very off guard. Like this came out of nowhere right after a COVID season where, I mean, we were just trying to get through it, get our kids out of the house, get them active, get them doing things. And then we hear this, and I think we were all kind of stunned by it. I understand that they heard and they made some concessions. I still feel that the main points that the state listed, that they want more participation. They want more of a rest in between sports. I still feel we need to talk about that. I have my own ideas on why kids don't play multiple sports, and I'm going to stick to it. It's because of specialization, and it's not giving them a few more days off is not going to get a kid to play more. I mean, I'm happy they listened. I still think there could be a few more changes, but at least we got started.
Now, when Jeff and John say, by the way, that they were totally caught off guard, I know a lot of people out there are wondering, wait a second, basketball coaches, how did they not know? In the first proposal that the NJSIAA put out in mid-April, they made it clear that they did not solicit the opinion of the basketball coaches. They may have solicited opinion from administrators. They even said that they solicited opinions from student ambassadors, but in no way did it say that they included input from coaches. Brian, now over to you. Your thoughts on the give back by the state organization.
Well, I'll reiterate just what John said. Coming off the year we had, and everybody's situation was different, but we came off a season, and everybody have a similar story or different story, but where we played 8 games and had like 16 practices the whole season. And the first news you hear after the season is your season's getting cut back. There's too much basketball. That's kind of tough to take. So that kind of takes you back a little bit. But and I had always said and been a proponent of, like, I always felt that last week in February is a wasted week. We should have started the states a week earlier. I felt it was just everybody scrambling for games. It didn't mean all that much. And I never was a big fan of that last week. I always felt we could have started earlier. So it wasn't like I was opposed to shortening the season a little bit. I actually don't think that's a terrible idea. But when you talk about, like, who's got, where the idea is coming from, the one thing I think, I'm not an expert on anything, but I feel like I got pretty good anecdotal, evidence and after 28 years of coaching kids, when if kids are being brought into the discussion about what they feel is best, I feel like there's a reason they have coaches. If they knew the thing that was best for everybody, they wouldn't need us. So I feel like if kids are being brought in, then a coach needs to be there, and kind of like, coaches need to have their say also. I know that I know 90% of the time, if kids are having issues, the answer typically is more structure, more activity, more things to do, not less. Back off, give them more downtime. I feel like we have, a lot of issues going on with kids, and it's a worthy discussion to talk about their mental well-being and physical well-being, and I'm all for that. But I don't know that for the majority of the kids, having less time to do things is the answer.
All right, you're kind of leading me into my next question. I said before the show started that I was going to take the side of the NJSIAA just for argument's sake, so hopefully you guys won't beat me up too badly on this. One of the reasons why they wanted to shorten the winter season was because it was the longest sports season, not including football, but it was the longest sports season, and they wanted to shorten it to bring it in line with most of the other sports seasons. Do you agree or disagree with that? John, all right, Jeff, hand up. I see Mr. Jasper in the back. You may lead off.
Well, first off, Greg, I don't think there's any season should be equal. Every sport has its own special needs, and it's great to have some semblance of starting and ending, but at the same time, trying to equate each season to each other. We have different needs. I want to speak for a moment also about what Brian just said, and I think this is such an important point on dealing with this with the calendar, and that is we're talking about accountability, responsibility, chemistry on our courts, teamwork, and developing the life lessons that we all do through basketball. The less contact we have with them, the less likely we are to develop really the fundamentals that are so important to what we do. I'm not talking about, landing on two and making great bounce passes or a block out. I'm talking about how to be a good teammate and how to take direction and how to be fundamentally sound about your thinking. So what Brian said is so important for where we are, especially now. And when I think of the social ramifications of this whole past year and a half, we have a huge responsibility as educators that our courts are an extension of our classroom. And we don't need less time with them. Quite frankly, we need more time with them.
John, I thought I saw you raise your hand. You want to take a swing at that one?
I mean, without a doubt, this year, there were some days we played 3 games in a row. We hardly practiced. Those kids, my kids would have stayed in and practiced for 5 hours a day. They were so happy to be with their friends. I've been a phys ed teacher in a grammar school for 30-something years, and it always amazes me how the kids just keep running, keep playing, and keep smiling. That's what kids want. They want to play, and they want to be with their friends. And they don't, they don't look at it as a job or anything. They enjoy that. And I really felt the initial proposal was taking the coaches out of this. I heard one of the proposals say you could play as many 4-game weeks as you want. Now, you have to take 1 day off. And then the other 2 nights, there's probably wrestling matches or there's something going on in the gym. Where do we practice? Like Jeff was saying, part of it is bringing a team together, practicing, preparing to play your rival. That was playing 4 games a week in high school basketball, to me, that's absurd. It makes no sense. What about the kids being out? What about schoolwork? What about injuries? I mean, this was a proposal, and they said you can play as many 4-game weeks as possible. That's why we need to open up this season and get those days back. I don't want to play 4 games a week. It's not sound for anybody.
Can I jump in for a minute on something John just said with that? Because I think we both agree on something about we're not, and I go with Brian, we're not against shortening the season, okay? But we are against taking away some of our practice time and shortening our season based on some star-studded teams that will make it to the Tournament of Champions. They aren't all of us, okay? So when we're losing that time to say a couple of teams are going into that strata for another, let's take, another week?
It's about 2 weeks usually.
Another week that they go? I'm not sure that's a necessary thing if you have to weigh it against us having another game or 2 and a handful of more practices.
All right. Well, my teammate Darren Cooper wrote 2 very informative stories today after the NJSIAA meeting. And one of them was, do we get rid of the Tournament of Champions, which debuted my rookie year at the record 88-89? Do we get rid of that if it's only going to be 6 boys teams and 6 girls teams, this 12 state champions, eating up essentially 8 days? Do we eliminate those 8 days of TOC and give those days back to the regular season? I don't think I'm going to get too much of an argument from the 3 of you there. But if anyone talk about what, yes, Mr. Ziemba, you raised your hand. What?
Brian, you could go. I'll go after Brian.
Yeah, just quick. I mean, my feelings on that are in the memo that came out today, and Colleen McGuire, I think she summed it up great and perfectly at the end. I mean, and she's been very receptive to input. I think when they decided all this, they were talking about the winter season, not necessarily basketball, and they realized they had to make some adjustments for the sports-specific issue, which I think they listened and did a great job with to start. But in her memo today, it was a great line. She said, this is an extension of classrooms, just like it's an extension of a high school curriculum. I don't want to quote it because I don't remember it word for word. But like Jeff said, it's an extension, and they're of the same mindset. So I feel like we get it all on the same page. And she mentioned at the end, this isn't about trying to get kids scholarships or looking at some pie in the sky thing. And to that vein, like, I mean, a TOC, which, and Jeff's had experience in it. I've been fortunate enough to be there a couple of times, and it's a nice little thing. But you go down there, nobody's at your games. You're playing it's basically we're all public school guys, and I'm not going to mince words. It's basically a big showcase for 3 of the elite teams that have their all-star team put together, and everybody else just kind of shows up to be a punching bag for it. I mean, and That's is what it is. And for the rest of the state to cut off 7 days or 8 days of their schedule to entertain that, I'm not a big fan.
Okay, that was too easy. John?
I agree with Brian on that point. If you eliminated the TOC and you just played down to, say, a Group 1 champ, a Group 2 champ, you really need 6 games. You play 4 games in your section. You would play 1 sectional semifinal and 1 final. But that TOC goes on for 2 weeks. I was talking to Jay Mahoney today, and Jay said we were 31-0, and we lost to Snyder in the TOC, and all everybody asked me is, who'd you lose to? He goes, we were 31-0. We were happy. But the only thing, and Brian, maybe you can answer my question on this. I did see there was a concession today that college coaches could come in and work and watch workouts with players. Who made that concession? I mean, not a lot of them are coming to Emerson.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about that, but that seems which group was there? Were we something traded for this? Because
I can
they're
tell you,
talking about no scholarships and kids should work for scholarships. But now they're saying, wait a minute, we're going to allow the kids in or the coaches in during the recruiting period, which is great. But again, for 80% of the schools in the state, that works for Bergen, that works for Roselle Catholic, that works for Hudson Catholic. Was this a concession today, or do we give something up for this? I'm not sure where that came from.
well, John, I can speak just briefly to that point because that was proposed by the NJBCA, the Bergen, the New Jersey Basketball Coaches Association, of which I didn't even know existed. And you mentioned Hudson Catholic and Rich Marinero. Is that the right? Is he the coach and AD there? He's the president of that. And he told me in my discussions on going around all this stuff that was a proposal that he had made to Colleen and the committee to get kind of a showcase for college coaches. What was given up for that, I don't know, but that's where that comes from.
And just quick with that. So wait a minute. Let's say Brian's coaching football at Old Tappan, and Old Tappan is playing football, and one of their basketball players, he's going to leave to go to a showcase? I don't get this. Like we're saying we're not worried about scholarships, but then we're opening up a new can of worms. To me, that deal was a little I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out how that deal was rolled through, and if it cost us anything.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how that all played itself out, but that's kind of where it comes from.
I want to bring it back onto the court. Of course, again, today's proposal is only a proposal, not set in stone. It still has to be voted on next month. Again, there it is. The on the left-hand side in blue, 21-22 season stays the same. 72-day regular season. 2022-23 is the first of 4 years where if the proposal is voted on and confirmed is where the changes are. As you can see, the big change is the 12-day reduction in the regular season. Gentlemen, if this gets voted through, what does a 12-day reduction in the regular season look like for basketball coaches, boys or girls in New Jersey? Brian, can we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, simply put, that's going to be every week's going to be a 3 or 4 game week. I mean, when you get weather and other issues, we all get jammed up. I mean, you know, there could be a positive. I mean, listen, coaches come from all cuts and everything else, and we've all experienced different types of things. I think on average, probably 2-3 cancellations a year for weather issues, and then you try and match those up and mix it in with the county tournament. I mean, that's one of the big downsides is going to be is trying to jam all that in and work with the gym facility use. I mean, the kids may get a break at the end of the season. They're getting no break during the season. We'll immediately go to 7 days a week of, trying to squeeze in whoever traditionally tries to give their kids a day off during the week or whatever. It'll be 7 days a week all the way through. You're not going to have any days off. It's just not going to be practical.
John or Jeff, who wants to go next?
Go ahead, John.
the thing, if I had to look at this and say one thing, and we talked about it already, well, and Brian just brought up a great point, because no one talks, like when we were talking about all the seasons being the same, no one has snow like we have snow in the winter. So, I mean, that comes into play. That could just blow everything up. But I feel like if they move the state tournament a little bit later still, maybe around the 20th, you really need 2 weeks to get through to a group champion. And the TOC, I mean, how many people, how many is that really? The majority of the teams are done. I feel like I don't know if they're going to go back on the end date, which is, I think, in the first time it comes out, it's March 5th. But if we move the state tournament a little later and we don't have to play 4-game weeks, it'll give us some practice time. I mean, we have to try to somehow, meet them. I know they're not going to give back everything we want, but I think it's very important. I am so against the 4-game week. And listen, as a boys basketball coach, I grew up, the Jamboree was everything. And I know the girls county tournament is obviously just as huge to them. Are we still going to be able to have those things? I don't know. I'm
going to speak to 2 points there. Thanks for bringing that up, John. We recognize one, I believe the term in the proposal is a 22-game schedule with 1 tournament. Does that mean that the holiday tournaments are in jeopardy? Because if you're going into the county tournament, that's your 1 tournament. They didn't say it is 1 county tournament. They just said 1 tournament. I believe I'm right on that.
I believe it said league or county tournament, although the story I read today said county tournament. We're getting a little tight there, but the bottom line is they promised a 22-game regular season plus a county tournament not to exceed 32 teams or 5 games. That's the April proposal that I saw, plus the state tournament. So if you did go all the way, you could still break the 30-game mark. Again, the problem is, my sense is the basketball season is sort of 50-50 breakdown of practices to games, and with losing 12 days, you're going into more games, a higher percentage of games, and a lower percentage of practices. Maybe you're going 55% games, 45% practices. You're losing 4, 5, 6 practices. Does that sound? You're not preparing. If you're playing a back-to-back game in a 4-game week, you have no preparation. Maybe the schedule makers can schedule back-to-back games against the same team. That way you've already scouted and played against that team the night before. A solution here, but don't listen to me. I'm just
sometimes that's not always good either, especially if there's bad blood.
Greg, there's still a lot of loose ends on this, and I'm hoping the people who are watching this tonight have some really good ideas, and that they send them all to Brian Dunn, and then we'll all deal with them. And then we'll decimate that, and then we'll continue to look at this.
Now, a couple of you have referenced county tournaments. I wanted to throw that in. Again, on the original state proposal, the regular season ended February 6th. Now, with those 9 days or roughly 9 days of givebacks, the regular season would run until mid-February. Most county tournaments, at least in our area in North Jersey, end the last couple of days in February. What impact do you think that losing the 12 days would have on county tournaments, the Jamboree, the Pascack, whatever it is, Bergen County tournament, Pascack County tournaments? How would the loss of 12 days impact county tournaments?
If I just say about the Jamboree, for a school like myself, if they went like this year, one of the things, or not this year, this was different. We were allowed the year before, we're allowed to play 26 flat. That was one of the things we're allowed to do. If they went from 22 plus a tournament, and they also put in another thing where you can play 24 flat, then I would go into the Jamboree if I made it, because I'm probably going to only last a round. I wouldn't go into the Jamboree if that was my only tournament that I'm allowed. I'm sure the NJIC is going to come up with something for us, because why would I go into the Jamboree It doesn't make sense. So I don't know if what I'm saying is, if they said 22 games plus a county tournament or 24 flat, then I could finagle a little bit where I could say, hey, listen, my kids earned that spot in a jamboree. And, for a small school like me, Matt, like I love going to the jamboree, even if I, maybe a little overmatched. That's one of the little tweaks I think they need to make in this is to have like a couple different situations like we have now. You could play 26, you could play, I forget what the other ones. I always just go 26 flat.
This is John is a great point, and I think that's where we get into the regional differences. Like up here in Bergen County, the Jamboree and the girls tournament have their own way of doing things, and I know they do it much different in different parts of the state. Some people have their tournaments that last week or 2 weeks, or some people have it during the season, but it's just a conference tournament and they seed it different. I mean, this type of schedule that we're talking about is going to the Jamboree and the girls county tournament will cease to exist as we know it. It'll be total changeover, and whether that means 8 teams coming into the county tournament or whatever, and everybody else or league tournaments, it's going to be a total overhaul of that.
Okay. All right. Final couple of questions, and that is, Brian, you are also a football coach. As we know, football has a very strong organization of coaches. You have a lot of say in what happens during the football season because you are unified. Obviously, the basketball coaches put on a full court press the last few weeks to get the NJSIAA to amend its proposal. So what will basketball coaches do moving forward here over these next several weeks into June, when the NJSIAA is going to vote on whether to stay with their current proposal or whether they amend it yet again? What will basketball coaches do? And from a football coach's perspective, what do you recommend basketball coaches do to continue over the next couple of weeks to be heard?
Well, I'm not recommending anything because I'm not, unless I'm the guy willing to step up and do the work. Like I have a hard time recommending. I know what works in the football, state coaches association. It took a long time to unify the guys from the different parts of the state because everybody has different wants and needs. And like I said, it's very regional and that took a lot of work, but those guys came together and brought good representation from all parts of the state and public, non-public, and got guys together to discuss such a wide range of issues from health, safety, length of season, number of games, playoffs. Playoffs is always a big part of it. And the state was always, the NJSIAA, always very receptive to listening to not always, but as of late, last 5 years, receptive to listening to all the input. Now that with coaches, as we all know, any group of coaches, you put a bunch of coaches in the room together, everybody's going to have very different opinions about what they think is best. But you can't get a unified voice unless everybody gets together, and there are going to be some people think differently, unhappy. But if you get a majority rule, that's really where you have to go and have everybody on board with this is the direction you want. So I think that's probably something that is very worth considering for basketball coaches. And I'm sure the NJSIAA would be more than happy to listen to any input they had. They always have been. My experience was they always were very open to listening to the football coaches.
Okay, John, over to you. Same question. What must basketball coaches do over the next several weeks to continue to have their voices be heard before the state votes on this proposal that starts in 2022, 2023? Well,
like Jeff said, if Benji Wimberly, I know Paul Sarlo's very heavily involved in the sports. They're basically, I think, the two biggest, advocates for the high school sports in the state. Maybe we do need to come up with a couple proposals for them. And then, like Brian just said, it's going to be hard to get some type of committee together now that represents the whole state. That's another thing that is on my mind. How come certain areas of the state aren't represented by that calendar committee where basketball may mean a little bit more? And I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing a diverse group of people from all over on that committee. But for what we need to do, we need to somehow unify us and say, can we maybe start the state tournament a little later? I think the number one thing, though, that I think you can get a good majority of the coaches agree on, I think the TOC's got to go.
Jeff, you started a petition. You got a whole bunch of signatures. Final word. What has to be done over the next few weeks? Is it a full court pressure? Is it a light pressure? Is it we'd like to have a chat with you? What do you do moving forward here in the coming days?
I certainly always say that continuing to use our voice is most important. So that's what got us a little bit of these concessions was both being persistent and patient and speaking up. I think it's Nick Marinara who has, he's the president of this New Jersey Basketball Coaches Association. They do have something. Whether or not that becomes a major player in this and can represent all of us, I don't know. But I think still going forward, it's just a matter of nudging this thing. I thought tonight there were some unbelievably great ideas put forward, and that these ideas need to be put down on paper and brought again as a plan, pushing that back to the middle of February as they have, eliminating some of that state tournament stuff at the end, adding, as John said, a 24-game schedule to allow for that flexibility if you're in the county tournament and out, giving us those opportunities and giving us, quite frankly, more practice time. Because I think we all agree that it's practice that makes us do what we do. My friend Brian Dunn had given me a great argument not long ago, and he said, in your class, you're teaching, whether you're teaching history as we do or math or whatever, you're not given a test 3 and 4 times a week. You teach the material, and then you have a game. The game is the test. But we're not doing that 3 or 4 times a week. We need to practice. We need to teach. And then we can allow our kids to play.
All right. Well, that about wraps it up. We went into overtime here. This is my longest show. Of course, I do not have a limitation on how long the show is supposed to go. And I actually, from talking to basketball people, feel like grabbing a ball and going out and shooting in the final minutes of daylight here, throw up a few air balls because I haven't played in over a year. But I would like to thank my my guests, Jeff Jasper, Pascack Valley girls basketball coach, John Ziemba, Emerson boys basketball coach, and Brian Dunn, Northern Valley at Old Tappan girls hoops coach, and also a football coach. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being my guests. Thank you all for watching this program. For Varsity Aces Live, I'm sports writer Greg Mattura for NorthJersey.com and The Record. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.